Hello and welcome. My name is Thomas Conroy, and this workshop is titled Resistance and Restructuring. The live discussion date will be on the 9th of November, and that is at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and I hope you will join me. Resistance and restructuring. How can we bring generous willingness and healthy boundaries to our problem solving as we navigate our way as interim ministers? Resistance often points to a need for restructuring, and the conundrum, the paradox, is that restructuring often induces and incites resistance. So what I thought we could do together is take a look at how interim pastors can confidently enter new spaces where we are expected to solve unexpectedly complex and tangled problems. I know you have your stories. When we gather at weekly meetings on Tuesdays or Thursdays and the Zoom windows populate, I'm always interested to hear what problems people are having in their current contexts. And sometimes we're surprised at the nature of the problems, but I'd like to give us some ways to figure out how to solve problems. And I want to start with a piece of consolation, a quote from Jeremiah. "I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says God, to give you a future and a hope." I hope we can keep this in the midst of our time together. So I suggest that we problem solve by recognizing and living fully into self-awareness, consciousness of the needs of others, naming and framing our intentions and expectations, and tempering self-patience and self-critique. So that last part is a bit of caretaking while we intend to do lots of giving and listening and understanding. We don't put ourselves last. So I want to impart this self-awareness, yes, the consciousness of the needs of others. Sure, making our intentions and expectations clear so that we can participate in our communal understanding, all the while tempering our self-patience and self-critique. I'm going to look at a couple of different authors and resources. The first will be Rowan Williams, the 104th Bishop, Archbishop of Canterbury, and his book, Being Human. I read this book this past summer, and it really inspired me and was one of the catalysts that got me to thinking about how to offer this very workshop. Another one with which you will be familiar most likely is William Bridges' Transitions, and this edition has some conversation questions that have been created by Susan Bridges to expand the content and expand the usefulness of it. And then Eric Law, leader of the Kaleidoscope Institute, and his Holy Currencies, another book that has inspired me a great deal as we look at the wealth of resources we have both in people and ideas and spaces and practices right in the very community that we are in, if we will just take the time to recognize it. I will be diving into each of these books a little bit more during the live session, but a few things that I'd like to bring to our attention now. William Bridges and Susan Bridges, in terms of my topic of self-awareness, offer this: the goal of one phase of life becomes the burden of the next. So I think about how making a decision today will have an impact on the future. See how choices today might privilege or tax the future. Perhaps we can step back far enough to come to better understandings of our self-awareness and what we need right now, what we want right now in comparison to what might be best for the future. Another topic, consciousness of the needs of others. I'm going to take a look at all three authors, as I mentioned, but right now I'm highlighting something that Rowan Williams has offered. He says self-awareness is located somewhere. It's not nowhere. So he asks us to consider how we relate to the world and the people around us by considering who are the most significant people in our lives and how we imagine they see us in relation to them. So this could be family members, friends, and maybe in our context, it's going to be members of the congregation and maybe other members of the staff. Eric Law offers that we stay mission-minded and outward-looking. So this consciousness of the needs of others moves beyond the building and into the community. And this is why Eric's work excites me so much. He examines the currencies, he calls them holy currencies, of relationship, truth, wellness, gracious leadership, time and place, and of course, money. But it's these first ones that really can give us a look into who we are and what gold we already have in our possession so that we can do our ministry and be well aware of what others might need from us and how they might benefit. My topic of naming and framing intentions and expectations comes with some inspiration from Rowan Williams' quote here. We must take very seriously that the world resists being controlled. So in our talking and time sharing, we will be looking at pieces of resistance that are happening in our communities right at the moment. You'll have breakout sessions where you're able to articulate a point of resistance and then maybe ask some questions as to why the resistance is coming, and if there is any piece of willingness around there, and how much resistance and willingness are operating within you as the leader. Eric Law on naming and framing intentions and expectations will call us to identify our assets and liabilities, and these have to do with those topics of the holy currencies that I mentioned. And we'll assess what liabilities and assets are holding us back, and we'll evaluate assets and liabilities that could be repurposed. Maybe there's something that is already the answer in our very center of our lives, and we're just not seeing it that way. But if we look at it from a different perspective, perhaps we'll discover some solutions within. Tempering self-patience and self-critique. Eric Law offers that we seek a dialogue, seek mutual understanding, look for clarification before judgment. And he has many other guidelines in Holy Currencies that all lead to finding community-owned resolutions. I hope this communicates something to you, that it's not all on you. The weight is not all on you. If we work together, we can maybe find a way to own the problem together and then be on the road to owning the solution together. So these perspectives once more: self-awareness, consciousness of the needs of others, naming and framing intentions and expectations, tempering self-patience and self-critique, all the while dealing with places where we find resistance that points to a need for restructuring in our contexts. Some questions that we might want to ask. They seem obvious, but they're worth going to again, as if for the first time. What is God calling us to do? How is God calling us to do this? What do we do well, and do we want more of that? For this workshop, I provide a list of learning outcomes, and hopefully those questions, those God questions, and some of the principles from our various authors will lead us to a way for the interim pastor to solve the unexpected, complex, and tangled problems, and begin to articulate the balance of generous willingness and healthy boundaries. What are we willing to bring? What boundaries are we willing to put in place so that we might handle resistance in both a kind way and a purposeful way, And it's not that we're ever going to escape chaos completely, but we might be able to find a way to have productive chaos as opposed to non-productive chaos. We can begin to articulate our personal centering principles that will align our focus and intention as we lead others. And I'm hoping that some of these books, one or more of them, might have just some piece as we explore them more deeply that might be something new that you will try, something that you haven't tried before that might just ignite the spark of a way to move your group forward. And then, staying with our theme of the whole week, we will begin to articulate new hope and a new story for our issues in our various contexts. In the breakout sessions, I will ask people to identify one main point of resistance, and the first round will be a speed round, a word or a phrase, whatever you're feeling at the moment that is a point of contention or a problem, an issue. I call it a sticky wicket, a snag, that might be something that needs to be addressed right now. And I want to have a forum for you to begin to think about it. The first round will be a speed round, and then we'll dive deeper with a few more follow-up breakout sessions with sharing time. So remember, we're going to be asking what God is calling us to do, how God is calling us to do it, what we do well, if we want more of that, and what our community needs. So this generous willingness and healthy boundaries will guide the resistance that we face and help us find the path to restructuring and problem solving. I hope that you will join me on the 9th of November at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I look forward to hearing what's going on in your world, and I look forward to you being able to share some of your frustrations, some of your joys, and hopefully what you find to be the outlook for hope for the future. Thank you so much. Thomas Conroy here, and I look forward to seeing you on the 9th.